Okay? P. Shit. Patrick P. Shit, who used to be with Google.
Same response, sir. Same response, sir.
Patrick P. Shit.
Patrick Pichet?
Patrick P. Shit, who used to be with Google. Who used to be with Google.
Same response, sir.
Patrick P. Shit. Patrick P. Shit,
Same response, sir.
who used to be with Google. Who used to be with Google.
Thank you, Thomas Schoenberger. I was bugging the shit out of Thomas today. In a great way.
And clearly, our people were overrun by the nut jobs. I want the record to reflect that I did not call Senator Sanders an ignorant slut.
Good evening, everyone.
And we're only really here because thus far you've been right.
Patrick P. Shett. Patrick P. Shett. Who used to be with Google. Who used to be with Google.
Same response, sir.
Patrick P. Shett. Patrick P. Shett.
Same response, sir.
Who used to be with Google. Who used to be with Google.
Oh, Patrick Pichet?
P. Shett. Patrick P. Shett.
Guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. Our toil, resources, and livelihood are all involved. So is the very structure of our society. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes. We should take nothing for granted. Only an alert and knowledgeable citizen
Oh, Jesus, we're in
can
trouble.
compel the proper meshing of the huge industrial and military machinery of defense
With our peaceful methods and goals.
partners. Have you ever seen where Psyop has worked with other like sister services or anything like that?
Yes, all the time. One of my first deployments was the Joint Psychological Operations Task Force.
Nice.
We helped set that up in Iraq.
Nice. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the American Awakening PFC Bergy reporting for duty. I got a good show lined up. I hope everyone had a wonderful weekend. Hi, Missing Par. It's Fran. How you doing? Hip. Hooah. Stallworth. Hello. Peppermint Patty. Wicked. Hello, all of you. TK. Hello. I need raccoons holding on to the flower stems. I got a raccoon. I got one. Just not. I got a green screen on one, so we got to get these things loaded up. I got more audio clips I've been clipping for a while, but I got to get them migrated over. Hello to YouTube. Hello, Betty Davis I on YouTube. And William Kennedy. Hello. Welcome to the show. Got a good show lined up tonight. That thing I played just quick in the beginning was a little kind of like a little commercial thing I put out. Tonight, our show is called, we're on part 4. Let me do this here. Iraq. See if we go to the American Awakening to the Psywar. Let me do this here. Yeah, there we go. And there we are. There we go. So we're running the 10-part series called Psywar, doing 3 a week. And spent some time over the weekend trying to make it look nice, trying to make it make sense so it can be actually used as a reference for people. Doing my best. You go to war with the tools you got, not the tools you want, right? As Rumsfeld said. So I got today's show lined up. We got 4 of them. We got 3 in the can, as they say in the biz. And today's show, which I actually had online most of it, I think like Saturday night, I put it up, maybe Sunday for my Patreon supporters. Thank you very much. Here we go. If I had called you or bothered you too much this weekend about being all geeked out about the co-host arriving on Friday, possibly earlier. It's hard to say with these mail-order co-hosts. But so we got today lined up the psychological warfare in the age of social networks, part 4. What is Psyop? ? Oh my God, right? So, and that's literally so I've been digging through and doing research on some of the videos put out by the 8th Psychological Operations Group, the 4th Psychological Operations Group. Hey, where's my freaking... There it is, right there. And so what they did is they put out a thing called Psywar. From the Psywar group, they put out what is Psyop? Only a couple minutes into that, and I was like, wow, this is freaking just like on a personal level. It just became really cool because the person that they're interviewing was one of the people that stood up the JPOTF, the Joint Psychological Operations Task Force in Iraq. Notice in that image right there, I don't know if you can see the mouse or not, but notice in that image, yeah, you can, the chess piece there, what's it, knight, I guess, whatever. And you'll notice that same chess piece is in the video that we're playing. But, so no, I got a good show lined up tonight. And I also wanted to make I also saw another thing in this new Netflix movie that's out. I don't know if it's new or not. I think it's actually pretty new. called Six Underground. Kind of fits really well with the what is Psyop question. Here we go. Let me take a look here. Okay, we're looking okay and everybody's got the volume. Everybody's looking good. Jane Doe. That's a likely name. Probably is a person's name, though. So I wanted to play this video again. This was from, I believe, part 2, the narrative. I took a clip out of this just simply because I've had to listen to it a few times, and I want to share that again.
To go ahead and start us off here.
Okay. Well, I often talk to people about the difference in the way that we use the word narrative as opposed to some, information or stories or messaging, things like that. I use the term, it comes out of narrative identity theory. It's a psychological and philosophically based idea of how identity is created in part through the stories we tell about ourselves. And when it comes to narrative warfare, the difference, I think, if I understand what information warfare is, I think the difference is that narrative warfare isn't really warfare over the information, but it's warfare or struggle or conflict over the meaning of the information. So that means, for example, when disinformation takes, when people or individuals just stick to their belief in certain disinformation despite facts and truths and statistics and information you can give them to the opposite. They do that
AKA the Bergy-Bit.
Because the disinformation is more meaningful to them than the information, than the truth. And what does that mean, more meaningful? Ultimately, bottom line, what it means is it promotes and boosts their sense of self. It's their identity that it's meaningful to. And that's the bottom line meaning, right? Who you are and, what you believe in.
So, as a patriot, which I consider myself, that is a huge part of how someone or I would define meaning in much of what is important to me. So things central around that particular narrative. Excuse me. That's the case with a lot of people, right? So we went over the narrative, but what is Psyop, right? So I wanted to do a response to this video put out by the 8th Psyop group based out of Fort Bragg. I'm, of course, reading this along here. This video, I don't have a teleprompter, but it helps me keep on point, right? So this video was kind of special to me that she was one of the first to stand up the JPOTF, Joint Psychological Operations Task Force, in Iraq, which is a place I later lived and worked for nearly a year. Some questions that I'm going to want to address down through here are why are they still thought of as leaflets and loudspeakers if they are so good at influence operations? Ow, that kind of stung a little bit, but I had to throw that one out there. No offense, right? So these guys, their one responsibility in the Army is to control the narrative, and as you'll see, and you've seen, right, in the previous videos in recruitment stuff, that this, the PSYOP unit, psychological warfare, is more or less considered to be leaflets and loudspeakers, right? Which that's a part of it, just like IAA is a part of it, and all of these different things are a part of the overall mission, right? So, but kind of like the questions that I have are these guys, which are largely nerds. Sorry, I'm, being a bit self-deprecating there, because I was one of them. Although I was not a member of the. I want to make that very clear. I was not a member of the Fourth POG. I was my unit was JCSE, the Joint Communication Support Element out of MacDill. We were part of, we were ARSoft, Special Operations, but not actually special operations. We were Special Operations for the signal support component in the same way that the Psyop guys are part of Special Operations, right? So let's do this. Let's dig into this really good video. And it's only about 45 minutes. I'm not going to probably make it all the way through because I'm going to be stopping and chit-chatting and such. Actually, I start right there. Let's start right here because everything else... Actually, let me do this here, and hopefully it will start back at the spot that I was at. There we go.
Into the reason why you're here.
Here we go.
Talking about the regiment and kind of what is Psyop. So could you please kind of explain what that means to you, maybe break it down into layman's terms, and maybe give us your best definition of Psyop?
Sure. So simply put, it's influence. We influence behavior, and that is of a foreign audience, whether that's an individual, a group of people, an organization, a government. We find out their likes.
And she does look familiar to me as well. I was there from 07 to 08, well after I believe she was there. But these guys bounce in and out of there all the time. She's high speed for sure.
Dislikes, vulnerabilities, what persuades them to do certain things, and we use that to our advantage to get them to do what we want them to do in the interests of U.S. Military and national objectives.
Hashtag Psyop for good.
Okay.
Had to throw that one out there to mess with Riley.
So I've had a conversation with a lot of my peers and even just folks that have been around the regiment for a while. And one of the things that I like to kind of put out as an example or try to break it down more simple for folks that don't know what we are is like sales and marketing. What would you say to that as an example?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I would say it's fairly similar. We are just like a marketer. We're finding whoever we want to buy our product, and we're figuring out what will make that product interesting to them. So that is more of a physical aspect of it. For us, it's more influence. It's more you're trying to change an emotion, a behavior. So very similar. In the past, we have had opportunities, and
that fits in well with what I've said about how, the shadow net could be used for many things. It could make a very powerful tool for influence the outcome of a presidential election. Absolutely. It could be a very good tool for Homeland Security resources to catch pedophiles, right, in chat rooms and such, with its anonymity and non-attribution. It can also be incredibly useful for micro-targeting local people to help move milk off the shelf so it doesn't go bad, so you can control ordering and such by building these predictive models, right? So there's a lot of sales type of applications for the for psychological warfare, for Psyop. So, to that extent, there is good Psyop, absolutely. Problem is, anything that's good can always be used for something bad, right? And when you're talking about something that's capable of changing people's behaviors, which is what she's literally saying, using targeted, using their personal data to target their personal, to target and build predictive behavioral models, which they can then focus them in more targeted demographics of groups, and focus very specific messages, stories to control a specific narrative.
And we still do where you can do work with industry. We train with industry, with different marketing companies and corporations to kind of find out what their tactics and techniques are, and we take a little bit from that. And
should this be concerning? It kind of does. Taxpayers are funding applications to use to defend us against our adversaries. Should we be trading this knowledge for access to potentially, as I would understand, kind of their proprietary knowledge? And by the way, a lot of time their proprietary knowledge was built using taxpayer-funded dollars, and the proprietary knowledge was kept on that contract by the company that provided the contract, even though it was built entirely based on the contract itself and all the people from multiple organizations that helped out. They keep it, then they freaking sell it back to them, or they trade it back to them. This to me seems like an alarming acknowledgement, right? God bless him for being honest, but she's certainly not breaking. I doubt she's obviously, the laws change so much, regulations change. Obviously, she wouldn't be doing this if it was in violation of any type of regulation. These guys are really good about making sure they don't violate regulations, but there are a lot of people out there that just, memorandum by an 06 or above can solve it. So there's a lot of room for abuse potentially with a situation like this.
And we give a little bit of what we can do as well. So it's a good balance and sets us on a path for better influence.
No, I definitely agree. One of the things I kind of like to put it as is we're selling not a car or a Coke.
Right.
We're selling an idea.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of puts in perspective for folks.
Mm-hmm.
So looking at understanding that's what we are, how does Psyop actually conduct Psyop? Like, how do we do the things that we do within our regiment?
I told you this was good.
Well, it's changed a lot since I first came in. I just put it out there right now. The things that our Psyop operators are doing today actually absolutely blows my mind. And I know they are well above my level of what I could do if you asked me today. However, just going to the basics, we have our tactical Psyop. That's, our face-to-face, our on-the-ground, the bread and butter, where you're building that rapport with your target audience. A lot of people...
That face-to-face, right? So that's no tech.
Have seen the, I'm sure the loved picture of the leaflet drops
Right.
from, getting
Everywhere.
into denied areas, handbills, leaflets. We'll get into media platforms such as television, radio, newspaper, however we can get our message out. So that's a little bit on both the inform side, like just pushing information, and influence.
And also, what she's talking about there, to add a little more clarity, I am absolutely sure, is she's referring specifically to overt, like it has an acknowledgement of where the information is coming from, right? So overt information, where they're feeding, where like the PAO and whatnot are openly communicating information or stories to other countries, right? And the military is not supposed to be doing that to us, right? So she is not supposed to be doing what she's saying with American journalists, and God, I hope she isn't. And again, you see you see right down there the big chess piece there. That is the 8th. So that was what was on the wall in Baghdad behind where I was standing.
Today, it's really started to morph a lot more into social media,
Right.
the cyber realm, which which is great that we have a new and up and coming generation coming up that was born into it.
Right.
So they're
What, like Akbar? Jesus, that's fucking dangerous. I'm telling you right there.
very familiar, hopping on Facebook or Instagram, Twitter. So we can influence at all different levels. We can reach our audience.
So they are on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. According to her, right? Did I mishear that?
An up and coming generation coming up that was born into it.
Right.
So they're very familiar.
Okay.
Hopping
Familiar
on
with
Facebook or Instagram,
Gotcha.
Twitter. So we can.
So they're very familiar with hopping on it, which is kind of suggesting that that would be something that they would be doing, right? Like running operations on those platforms if they're picking people that are experienced in them. I'm just saying.
Influence at all different levels. We can reach our audience in different ways. So it's just really the sky's the limit, and being able to think out of the box and be creative of how you can get that one person or that entire group of people or government to do what you want them to do.
So
To get that one person or that entire government to do what you want them to do.
with that kind of thinking, and kind of you went across the spectrum of how we get our messages out. A lot of at times.
And again, that's not done by like this, an individual that's expressing himself, even if he's putting out memes and such. To change the outcome of an election requires a tactical, coordinated, well-funded operation, right? Like a Psyop unit like this would be able to put together. Again, this is not something a 400-pound kid in his grandparents' basement is going to be doing. Don't let them fool you.
There's a lot of criticism about the leaflets, the loudspeakers that last, to be cliche, that last 3 feet of interpersonal engagement. Is that something that's still relevant today, with the trend swinging towards the cyber realm?
Oh, absolutely. I think it is. I mean, especially within special operations, you're always going to have us on the ground somewhere, whether it is advising and assisting a partner force, or just going out and
The events of January 6th.
especially in like combat situations when we're on the ground, conducting that civilian non-interference to make sure we're decreasing the amount of friendly deaths or injuries,
Right.
and just
So going around to events and doing such like that, right? Well, and where are we? I don't want to lose that 808.
going out and building that rapport and helping building up forces and building up governments.
So what impact, so if they're, as you can see, and they go into this sensationalizing it a little bit later, and they went into it quite a bit in the previous ones as well. But if they're sensationalizing what impact is the sensationalizing of Psyop in the movies, social media, mainstream media, having on our nation and humanity? Are studies being done to understand the potential impact of recruitment and training of civilian assets, analysts, and soldiers, right? So she's talking about bringing these kids in who have experience in Facebook, Twitter, and the use of these social media platforms, They have a process they go to, a selection process they go through, but this is still the Army. I mean, come on, manage your expectations there. They let me in. Is there any correlation between the increase in military and veteran suicide with the training and use of predictive behavioral analytics to target, manipulate entire cultures and countries? Oftentimes with the use of social network misinformation, disinformation, and interpersonal communication. So this is a great conversation this woman's having right now, right? She's giving you one side of the Psyop argument, and that is we can change the minds of individuals and we can change the minds of entire countries. She just said that, right? But what's the cost? What's the other side of that argument? How is that impacting suicide rate of veterans, right? And from what I understand, the suicide rate of like drone pilots and such, people involved with that, blowing up massive amounts of people from thousands of miles away, that kind of builds on them, right? That builds on them. And it causes PTSD and it causes things like that. What does someone sitting there being trained in misinformation and disinformation, what does that do to the human psyche? Do we understand the human psyche enough to really say either way? What consideration is the Psyop community giving to the use of their newfound popularity from the marketing of Ghost being hijacked by our overseas? Well, let's keep going on. I don't want to get ahead of myself there. We'll go to that one next.
So I think tactical on the ground Psyop will always be a thing.
So I think we're talking towards it, but kind of my next question is really like, who do we work with? Who's the regiment's typical partner or customer when we're out doing Psyop?
Mm-hmm. So a lot of times we pair up with our Special Forces aligned partners, the operational detachments that are on the ground. We also align with and work with State Department reps, such as in the embassies. We'll work with different.
Would she have worked with someone like Marie Helen Morris, who is a professor of psychology and has given briefings to the State Department? My answer to that, and who, by the way, is like apparently a professor of some form of like cyber terrorism. My answer to that, having worked with these people, would be unequivocally yes. Now, whether or not specifically she has, I can't give you that answer, but somebody out there could. And I think it's highly relevant because I believe this is having that second and third order of effect on our country as a whole, right? So we're not taking into consideration what selectively targeting people or, searching for people who have these skill sets, video gamers, right? And people skilled in social media is now a thing, right? But it's for the purpose of training for in some situations, misinformation and disinformation, lying, morally and ethically to achieve a victory. And I'm not going to sit here and debate whether or not that is good. I think actually there are probably a lot of times where that's actually been good and been justified and done so in a way that limited the moral component of it, right? The damage morally to it. That, like with the fake tanks, during World War I or whatever, the inflatable tanks that they had set up. That's different from collecting people's personal information through even commercial sources, compiling that into building these predictive models that they then use to target and push using these different tools and techniques. I mean, that is just way different. It's not the same conversation. So Psyop can be good, but you got to be very specific. What component of Psyop are we talking about, right? That's where I'm going with that.
Different government agencies as well. So we're pretty versatile on who we align with, who we support, and sometimes we have our own missions as well. And then on the other side of the spectrum, we again work in the embassies. Those are called our MIST teams, or military information support teams.
MIST.
That are more regionally focused and working maybe more diplomacy, education.
Right. Have you had experience with both sides of that?
I do. Unfortunately, I never really had the opportunity to serve in a MIST, a true MIST. Okay. They typically, I've just really Iraq.
I did, but it was as a contractor, so I didn't have the PT requirements.
In Afghanistan, no regrets except for, of course, per diem in some of those other countries.
Nice.
Pretty nice.
Definitely can be a perk.
Yes, but a majority of my experience was tactical,
okay.
Or just working more operational when it came to product development. And when I say product, I'm talking about that message or
okay.
that handbill, that leaflet, radio, television.
The medium.
The act, yes.
The medium.
Testing and evaluating, assessing what we're doing.
Okay. No, it's interesting now. So you mentioned a lot of Army partners. Have you ever seen where Psyop has worked with other sister services or anything like that?
Yes, all the time. One of my first deployments was the Joint Psychological Operations Task Force. We helped set that up in Iraq, and we did work with different partners. And then we might not have been living side by side, but we would go out and work with them. My last exercise that I did, I actually had the opportunity to work with the Belgian Psyop forces, which was amazing. It was great to collaborate.
Lots of waffles.
See how they do things, how we do things, and really built a good relationship, and hopefully get to work with them again. But other than that, we
Damn Belgians.
then have our host nation personnel that we work with. For instance, in Afghanistan, Iraq, their military is building up their Psyop or equivalent forces as well. And typically with Psyop, we like to work by, with, and through. So, not so much having a U.S. face on it. We want to have our partners, our host nation force, pushing those messages.
That's where we get into the attribution and non-attribution that I was speaking about, my friends. Let me do the. Tony's got something. Somebody was Tony. Well, they have to talk about it. Too many people are aware. The key now is to take a dump in the punch bowl so nobody knows what's actually going on. Well, you're probably not wrong there. Okay, but. And this is kind of like, and again, I kind of brushed on this the other day. I'm actually a little bit, I don't know, probably scared. Be 1,000% honest with you. But I have the ability to reach out to the former commander of the 8th POG, who I spent a year with in Iraq. And so, yes, if you try to go at it from the outside it's going to get real muddied. If I can take this to a personal friend who's probably a little pissed at me right now, ain't going to lie. Trained killers also. No, Burris is a good man. Burris is actually a good man. And to take that directly to them. What's that thing flashing on the screen somewhere? Okay, that's not. Yeah, okay, it's on my camera. So, any rate, I agree with what you're saying. That's what they're going to try. But I have, I think, maybe the ability, unique to most, to really try to get that conversation started from the people who can make a difference with it, right? People like Tory and those guys can ignore me or just try to discredit me. But people that I served with can't, right? They know and understand my qualifications. And, you know, as an information security officer, it was my job to look for vulnerabilities, threats. It was my job to make sure that we stayed in compliance when we were putting out our product. So, yes, Tony, I agree, but I have something I'm working on. It's being almost entirely delayed because of me being a pussy.
Messages to build credibility for them as well.
I think that's a common theme across all Army Special Operations.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of building capacity through whomever we're working with. So that's actually a good point. No, I definitely, I remember I actually had the opportunity to work with Czech Republic, some of their Psyop forces while I was in Afghanistan. And it's ironic because you talked about the kind of the partnership. The team that I worked with was actually trained by our schoolhouse here at Fort Bragg.
Oh yeah.
So they called me up and said, "Hey, I'm a Psyop team. Can we?"
Okay, trained by their schoolhouse at Fort Bragg. You know what that schoolhouse is? It's the John F. Kennedy Warfare Center, right? Now, I just had to make a comment. I responded to something somebody said. I responded to somebody to something somebody said on Twitter day before yesterday or somewhere. That how it was like, you know, all the Republicans that were doing this, and I'm like, that were like doing the Psyop. And I'm like, well, you know, I get it. They are. But you can't really leave out the Democrats. I mean, literally, the school that they train at is the John F. Kennedy Warfare Center. So, like psychological warfare center. So it's not the George W. Bush or the Donald J. Trump fucking psychological warfare center. It's John F. Kennedy. So, you know, at some point, Democrats have to start owning a little bit more than they do.
Can we work together? Absolutely. You know, you already know the things that I know. So let's figure out how we can have a mass effect on the battlefield. So it's definitely a unique opportunity to be able to work outside of just the Army.
Well, it's amazing too because, you know, as we all know, no matter what job you're in, you always have your left and right limits of what you can and can't do, and that differs across the globe. So when you have a partner force that you're working with, maybe there's a initiative or something that you want to get after that you can't quite do, or we don't have the capability or resources. Right. We just leverage our partners, our host nation to do it. So that's all coming back to having that ability to think outside the box and leverage resources that we don't have.
So we kind of talked a little bit about experiences kind of a little bit about where you've been. I've mentioned a few places that I've been. Typically, where does Psyop work? Like, where will you see Psyop soldiers working?
Everywhere.
Everywhere.
So
Now, ow, right? That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to build this image of the next James Bond being a Psyop guy. After we come back from the break, which is a bit off, I'm going to dig into that a little bit with that 6 Underground documentary that I'm talking about. I wish I could actually play a segment of it, but I'm not going to play anything that's going to possibly give one of those damn Torians the ability to go, oh, he's playing something that's not supposed to be played. Block him, because they will. So I don't want to play any of that, but I will talk about it and show some screenshots and such. I have like maybe a 20-second clip that I'm going to play. Just absolutely to show you. If YouTube burns me, then I'm going to be so fucking, well, what do you do? I got my other thing set up. And by the way, if you're listening to this, please visit me at, what is that? rumble.com/Bergy-Bit, I believe. Because I need to get more people signed up there in order to be able to live stream. And really have a good live stream for free anyway, and be able to have a good backup plan. Shit. That was the wrong button.
off the top of my head, and I don't want to get sharpshooted on this, I believe we're in about 25-ish different countries. Okay. I think about 80 missions going on. So it's pretty fascinating. Wow. And each country, each mission, even within a country, you might have multiple different teams throughout, may have different objectives and different goals and missions that they're doing. For instance, in Iraq, we have forces that are tactical, right. Working through with the operational inherent resolve, and then we have teams that are at the embassy.
Okay.
So,
and this is all at the same time.
All at the same time.
I talked about this in my first book, Victim of the Swamp, how the deep state destroyed the 40-year-old private. And in that book, I talked about how you could go up to this well, I didn't say that, but you could go up to this person, you could go up to that sergeant major there that I think, I'm not sure who the other guy is, what his rank is. He looks familiar, though, too. But you could go up to anyone and ask them what role they played in us leaving Iraq. And most anybody out there, Petraeus, Odierno, I don't care, go all the way to the top. One of the biggest reasons that we were able to reduce the violence enough for Obama to be able to come in and have us leave, even though he did it poorly without a SOFA agreement and blah, 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 it was, in my opinion, the work of these guys, our team, that really helped, and I'm not saying anything classified here, but that helped reduce the violence to where we could leave. And it's hard to really put a figure, although you can work it out. It's hard to really show how many kids didn't strap on a suicide vest because of your ability to communicate to them honestly why that's a bad idea, which sounds like something ridiculous to begin with, but yeah, you gotta figure out how to do that because they do. Back to this.
At the same time, so our number one thing when you hit the ground in a country, you want to reach out and find out where all your other psyop friends and family are, so that you can link together.
Deconfliction.
And making sure that we're all going in the right direction and helping each other out. Because when we deploy, we typically deploy in small elements. So sometimes you might be that only person.
Wouldn't that be funny if you were psyoping another psyoper. Didn't even know it. Ha ha ha! I bet you that's never happened.
At that embassy, or that only person supporting that task force as a
I looked it up. It's on the internet. It must be true.
I couldn't resist.
overarching planner. So you need to, again, going back to leveraging what's
Right.
available to you, or finding more resources out there.
No, that is something I've experienced firsthand. I definitely got pushed into a mission where I was the one guy working at the embassy, and it can be a daunting task for a junior NCO. I was a fairly new staff sergeant at the time, and it was an experience. It was a very good experience, but it can be intimidating. But it's very rewarding on the back end. Having that responsibility and actually going through and having accomplished a mission set like that.
So, if we're telling war stories, my favorite one, and especially, looking back now, I
love
just
this.
think it's crazy. But so there I was, newly promoted E5, 21 years old. Just had gotten activated, with 8th Battalion. Went forward to Iraq to set up the Psyop task force there and help run operations in Baghdad. And,
Nice.
it's early 03, so we're trying to find interpreters to help us out. And as most know, or some might not know, in Psyop we have a language capability or requirement. So whenever we come in, we get trained in language. Of course, I was lucky enough to have Arabic. So when we got in the country, it was hard to find an interpreter to get us around. And we are trying to reach out and find ways that we can build our dissemination platforms. We're trying to find newspapers, or how do we get to our target audience? How do we push out information? So it was myself and 2 young captains at the time.
I know one of them. I know fucking one of them.
And just running around.
I know exactly who the fuck she's talking about.
Around Baghdad.
Young and fearless.
Young and fearless, and I was the interpreter.
Oh, wow.
So I had to go
He's a good
in,
friend
and
of
of
mine.
course I was already at a disadvantage. One, I was foreign. 2, I'm a female. So going in, just, yes, that's a newspaper.
She looks like she's taken too, guys. Calm down.
Let's walk in and see how it goes. Of course, we made sure that they weren't hostile or anything, but
Yeah, that's
at first I
important.
got a little bit of blowback for being a female mainly. But once they realized that, I understood their culture, I respected it, and I knew their language, albeit maybe not the best, but we were able to converse. I made headway. We were able to pick up a couple different newspapers. We had, I think, a radio station, television, and then we were able to pick up other contractors along the way to help create some of our products. But
Yay! They picked. I wonder who that could have been. Do I have that? Let me do this here just real quick. Picked up a few contractors on the way. I can't resist. Hold on. I think I got it right in this. Did I put it there? No, I didn't. Hold on. Where are you? There. Hold on. There you go. Frequent. I shared this with you guys, but in case people who aren't familiar with the story, I'm gonna have to sneeze here. Where the fuck is that? Come on. There it is. Bing. Let me do this so I can more easily read it. So this is September 12th, 2008. Let me do this here. To whom it may concern, this is from the DO. This is DO Department of Army letterhead, multinational corps, Iraq, Baghdad, Iraq. This was given to me by Major Brad Burris, who is now like Lieutenant Colonel. Actually, he went on to be the 8th POG commander, if I'm not mistaken. Right? So that kind of should make this a little bit significant, but. To whom it may concern, it has been my distinct pleasure to serve as the direct supervisor for Mr. Patrick Bergy from 28 December 2007 through 12 September 2008. During that time, Mr. Bergy served as the lead technical director, directly supporting a classified Department of Defense information operations program. Throughout his tenure with the program, Patrick's ambition and drive to solve problems and enabled him to overcome challenges that were frequent and impossible to foresee, given the unique nature of this operation. He effectively established and maintained professional relationships with internal and external personnel. Well, not the pedo that I busted, but okay. Including host nationals, and represented the quintessential mix of knowledge, people skills, and organizational experience. Goes on. He's like, on a personal, and this goes, this is, Major Burris went on to say, on a personal level, I sincerely enjoyed working with Patrick and appreciated the value and integrity he consistently brought to the workplace. Thank you. I really think I tried to. He maintained a novel outlook that enabled him to see the big picture and is completely committed to the task at hand while remaining flexible enough to adapt to changing requirements. Patrick Bergy is a tremendous asset to any team, and I highly recommend him for any position he seeks. Now, Tori would not agree with you on that, but I would take the word of a major who actually got promoted to lieutenant colonel and then went on to be the commander of basically psyops across, America's psyop commander. So, Mr. Bergy possesses and exudes the highest levels of professionalism, technical competence. I paid him extra for that one. Organizational management skills. He's flat out bullshit right there. Well, no, I mean, okay, that's true, right? But competence, organizational skills. It's true when it came to my job. I was content management, knowledge management. I was great at organizational management. But you could ask anybody there, my shit was trashed, right? So, and I had like my own private office in the middle of a war zone. I had it was like only pretty much myself and Major Burris. We were the only two with our own like private offices. Everybody else had cubicles up front. I know. And basically what you see here, do you think there's a lot? Do you think I approached my job much differently in the field with these people as I do largely here with you guys? Yeah, well, I'm largely stoned when I'm doing this here, yeah, so, and I use maybe more humor than I would with these guys, but no, largely, it's the same guy. Regardless of assignment location, if any of my future missions require technological support, I will seek out Mr. Bergy as my first choice to manage and accomplish that task. I would be extremely pleased to provide additional details on Mr. Bergy's outstanding job performance and, more importantly, his unlimited potential for future excellence as a member of your organization. Point of contact for this action is the undersigned Brantford Burris. So, and I put this out there because this was actually given to me to submit to employers and people for references. I put this out there also, not for some ego thing. I put it out there because there are so many people running around that are telling you bullshit. And when I listen to them, I know it's bullshit because, well, did you see my resume, right? And again, I was the IT guy, but I was also in the room, right? And so I understand how a lot of this stuff works. And I also understand the language, right? And I know that Tori doesn't speak that language. Anybody who worked in the business would understand that. There's a lot of people out there that say that they do, but when you listen to them and you've been in it for as long as I have, you just know they're full of shit. So, any rate, let's drop this down and get back. Well, what time? Okay, it's 9:01. What we're gonna do? 8:01. What we're gonna do is we're gonna go into a break right now. Listen, need your help, need your support. Can really use it. Right? Got some great things coming right now. Right? So please, if you can help out, do freedomstream.tv/contribute or patreon.com/The American Awakening. Or American Awakening. The American Awakening. Clearly, I don't use a lot of notes. But on that note, I will see you guys back in 10 minutes. And again, take this time, if you can, to go subscribe with the Patreon. Go to freedomstream.tv. Help out if you can, right? Because we're doing some good stuff. If you can't see I'm not on the right track and worth your effort and support, then I get that. I'm doing my best. We'll see you in 10.
Let me start off with two words. Made in America.
Firefly. I know a guy very close to me and very well who retired a major shortly after that time. Absolutely, and that was his job. So I'm certain I know one of the two captains she's talking about. Yeah, high probability.
I want the record to reflect that I did not call Senator Sanders an ignorant slut.
The guy in the letter could have been one of them too, actually, Firefly. That's entirely possible. Actually, quite probable, because he was a major in '08, so that would have, well, no. I didn't even think about that, about Burris being the other one. So I may know both of them. Dun, 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 dun. Thank you, Thomas Schoenberger, for the music. Howdy, hip.
Patrick P. Shit. Patrick P. Shit. Who used to be with Google. Who used to be with Google.
Same response, sir.
Patrick P. Shit. Patrick P. Shit.
Same response, sir.
Who used to be with Google.
He used to be with
Who used to be with Google.
Oh, Patrick Pichet?
P. Shit. Patrick P. Shit. Who used to be with Google.
Same response, sir. Same response, sir.
Patrick P. Shit.
Oh, Patrick Pichet?
Show me something natural like Afro vitrified. Show me something natural like ass with some stretch marks.
I couldn't resist. I missed out on that button earlier when I brought up Akbar. I had to mess with missing parts. Sorry, missing parts. So Stallworth made an interesting comment. Said we need the army doing this in nation to flush out communists and figure the headspace they live in and alter completely. Now, I don't. It's a problem. People are we're under attack, right? This is a problem. But you know, there's a reason why that's called the John F. Kennedy. What is that? He said it earlier. It's John F. Kennedy School of Warfare, Special Forces at Fort Bragg, right? So, you know, the Democrats and communists are the ones that find that most often, traditionally, have gone to the media to control the media, state-run media, and to control and listen to the people, right? The Constitution, so I'm in total agreement that this is a problem, and I don't have the solution. But the Constitution says that our military is not to be used against us, although there are always going to be exceptions to that. And then, right, and then we have the problem where what are we creating by training all of these cyber warriors by training them in misinformation and disinformation, and them going out into society and working for Pepsi or Coke or the next campaign, and using these techniques that are oftentimes morally and ethically bankrupt. Is the end justifying the means? That's kind of where I'm going with this, right? Are we giving proper consideration to the potential to potentially be causing more harm than good, right? And if we were to sit down and look as to whether or not this was having a negative impact on our country by creating what we believe is the best offense to something other countries are doing to us, then most likely those other countries are going to be experiencing that same social decay. And it might be a way, if we were to rethink what we're doing, it might be a way to actually beat our adversaries by letting them kind of destroy themselves by using these morally and ethically bankrupt teachings and philosophies and metrics as part of their plan, right? I'm sitting here telling you as someone who is knowledgeable in this area, there are always many ways to skin a cat. And I don't think I'm allowed to use, I'm older, So that's just kind of like a thing we used to say. Of course, I've never skinned a cat. Skinned a rabbit. But let's go on. I agree. It was a good question. Thank you for posing that question. I didn't give you a solution, but I think it needs more context to what you're saying or what you believe to be the solution. I'm not entirely sure it is, and I'm not entirely sure we've looked at the ramifications of our decisions, because this is very new stuff we're doing, and I'm not entirely sure it's the best solution tactically.
As a young 21-year-old driving around Baghdad, talking to, personnel that you're not sure if they're going to be hostile or not,
Right.
it was intimidating, but it was thrilling all at the same time. And man, I could talk on and on about it because there's so many things, but it was amazing. And it's an experience like I'll never forget. And talking to a lot of other Psyoppers, I'm sure like yourself have been in similar situations where you're just that one person out there or with a small team and
Right.
just doing crazy things that are making national impacts.
Right. So I think you touched on a really good point, and it's something that's kind of a big part of our regiment, is the cultural understanding, cultural tolerance piece. So knowing you're now in an environment that's not the normal for you, it's their normal, but you found a way to adapt and work towards mission accomplishment. And I think that's something that really is a big part of our regiment.
It is. You definitely, the type of person that we typically look for, and I'm probably jumping ahead of the gun on some of your questions.
It's okay. It's okay.
But it was that individual that's, adventurous, that's versatile, can adapt to change, can work on minimal to no guidance for extended period of time, alone and unafraid at times.
Yeah.
But that's understanding, socially adept. That's again, granted, that can be hard for a lot of people.
I struggle with that.
And just having a basic understanding of humanity, I think, helps
I definitely
a lot.
struggle with that.
Luckily, our schoolhouse is they're phenomenal. I know they've been doing a lot of updates and changes, and hopefully you'll get them on here for one of your podcasts to talk about.
That is one of our subjects.
Yeah, but they'll teach a lot of these skills, and so I guess really a trainable person.
You're going to want to look for those.
That's got the heart to go out there and get after it is what we're looking for.
Psyop soldiers, in your example, you've been a Psyopper your entire career.
I have.
I have not. I was an infantryman before. And so one of the unique things with
We're all born infantry.
Psyoppers is because we work across the spectrum of operations, we get a lot of different experiences. I really like your story because, you said basically not only were you doing Psyop, but you were also the team's interpreter. So that's another skill that comes to the table that some people don't, I don't want to say they take for granted, but they may just not realize it's there because it's normal for us. We have to have a language, and we practice it, we keep up with it, but sometimes we forget something that as simple as our regular duty responsibilities is a skill in some cases that somebody may need. I actually had a pretty neat experience on my first deployment, tactical deployment. I was on a tactical Psyop team, three soldier team, and we hit the ground running. We got attached to an ODA in Afghanistan, and 3 days in, we're on a mission. And of course, Afghanistan, different parts, similar to Iraq and some of the other areas that we've been in of recent time, you tend to get into some conflict. And
I was in Helmand Province.
I'd already had experience as an infantryman, 2 deployments, and just so happened that my team encompassed some former infantrymen. And so when we got into our engagement, there was really no concern from the SF team that we were with. And when we got back to the base, they questioned where we'd come from. Like, where did we get our training? How did we know how to do the things we were doing? And it was because of our background as infantrymen. We knew how to respond.
Yeah, the rest of them, all they knew how to do was drop leaflets and loudspeakers.
Quickly and adequately for the situation. And that was actually a really, really good rapport builder with the team because we hadn't had a lot of time with the team at that point in time. So, we bring a lot of different things to the table. It just kind of, I think, varies soldier to soldier because everybody's background's a little bit different.
Yeah, and I think, whenever, for a while there, we weren't open to regular recruiting, like off the street, like I did. We were closed down for a long time. It was just in-service recruiting, which, at first I was, not too pleased with just because of my situation.
Right.
But I understood it because, where we're placed at different levels, I could be briefing an ambassador one day or briefing the commander of a TSOC, Theater Special Operations Command, the next. So, we're expected
That was totally the Bergy-Bit.
to be a little bit more mature
PFC Bergy reporting for duty.
and maybe have a little bit more life.
I didn't have a second language, but I had 10 years of experience in IT and shit. So they would send me in to deal with these situations. And I was like a couple decades older than most of the other guys that were there.
Life skills.
Right.
But you're right. Whenever it was closed off and it was just in-service recruiting, and still today, we just gather so many different skills and capabilities just from the experiences that others bring, and it's really great. And I think it's really helped advance the regiment. Again, for people like me, I didn't. I was a babysitter. I worked at a mall and Target for a little bit before I came in the Army. So I didn't have that much life experience. So a lot of what I learned, in addition to Psyop, was what I was trained in the Army. So, for instance, we get mobile force protection type training, defensive driving, shooting, anything that we can do.
Look what the Army built this woman into over 20 years. It's pretty impressive. From fucking Target and babysitting to this.
To make sure that when we are attached to specialized teams such as those ODAs, we don't become a liability. We don't become that group of, let's watch out for those guys. We want to be able to show, like, hey, we're experts at our craft, and yeah, we can pull our weight and we can take care of ourselves. So just like you said, that's what we got to do to keep in it.
So that actually touches on kind of my next question.
I struggled with the PT
really
component,
kind of
ain't gonna lie.
capabilities and skills. So, like, what other skills do Psyop soldiers have that people may not know about? Like, you kind of mentioned some of it, the driving stuff, the shooting stuff, because people, especially from some of the older members of the regiment, the guys that have retired from past conflicts, well, if you're using anything other than your influence methods, your mission's gone awry. What do you think about that?
Hacking.
Well, no, we definitely get a myriad of training, and much of which I'm like extremely jealous of now, because I know when I first came in, like, the highlights were you can go to SEER school, survival, evasion, resistance, and escape.
Now, so having one of the reasons that you might, one of the benefits you might get from me doing this is, like, there's a reason that this girl, when she says and uses acronyms like SEER, she then follows it up with the full name of it, because it's a habit that military get into. And you, all the time when you're talking with your colleagues, that's how you're talking. But when you're speaking to a general who will talk like that all day anyway, they will be like, if you submit like a card to one of their cards, and it just has an acronym on it, they will get pissed, and you'll hear it. And so, yeah, she's had it burned into her by the same, like, a staff officer mentality to not just use that. So I thought that was humorous. That's what I read from that when I saw it. I could be wrong. It's just, I'm thinking it is. I'm right.
Which is just a great time. I highly recommend everybody go to it. You learn a lot about yourself and a lot of good skills.
I would agree.
We did SEER.
So SEER and Jump Master were like the two.
SEER's where you get waterboarded.
Big things that we would strive for but now it's just expanded. The different mobile force protection schools that we can go to, shooting schools. We've also sent a lot of people to, as I said, like working with industry to gain some insight onto other type of influence techniques.
What?
Social media training. I don't even want to go down that rabbit hole because I don't want to sound completely unintelligent, but I got somebody I can recommend for the next podcast on this one. The level of social media training and things that we can do with it blows my mind. So really from tactical, operational, strategic, planner type training, we can get it all.
You know, by the way, real quick, you know, what was that? Google, it was MySpace. MySpace originally shut down because it had too many fake fucking personas that were spreading bullshit. Literally, an entire company was forced to shut down because it just became the Wild West for Psyop community. At least that's what it says on their wiki. And, look at the debate that Elon Musk had when he was buying Twitter. He was suggesting, I wonder what the final numbers were. He probably knows now that he owns it, but he was thinking, and they were showing as much as 20% or so, the fake accounts and the tools that she's talking about here are really impacting, or could, as you can see, be impacting Americans' jobs, especially the billionaires. Right? And think about how many contracts, like, is Elon Musk going to say no to something he's being pushed? As much information as he's giving out right now, is he going to say no if they're going to pull a contract for SpaceX? If he doesn't go along with something that these guys are doing? I don't know. I hate to see us in that position. We shouldn't be in that position. They could legislate. They could make they could change back some of the modifications that they made to the Smith-Mundt Act. Again, well, you know what Stallworth is saying isn't wrong. We are at war. There are people that want to use these vulnerabilities within our society and exploit them and to use against us. But again, is the end justifying the means?
I actually attended the Army Space Cadre course, and I didn't know that was a thing until it was offered to me. And it makes you think, like, why do we need to know those things? Why do we need to have that skill set? But I think, as you mentioned earlier, as things continue to trend towards the technological side of things, it becomes more important for us as influencers to know how to integrate with those capabilities and then use them on the back end. Yeah,
integration is key. I mean, we can do things standalone, but it really helps when you have others that you can incorporate. There's all kinds of other cyber schools that you can go to. Electronic warfare.
There you go.
We work with them.
Right.
So electronic warfare would fall under like your CNO, computer network operations.
So we need to go to some
CNO, IA, and IIA support the overall IO mission.
Their training so that we understand their lingo and how to communicate with them. So it's really interesting, especially as things move forward and there's new skill sets popping up that we can take advantage of. But what's really cool is, especially within our regiment, if there's a school out there that we think will help benefit us, or a skill set or a training, a lot of the times we just have to find it, request it, and we can get our folks into it and test whether or not it's useful. But that is, I think, one of the perks about being in our community.
Is that just military training that you're talking about?
No, not at all. I mean, we can do civilian type training as well. Just have to have the justification and how we see it's going to be beneficial. So, yeah, wherever we can find training, we'll search and we'll look. Because with Psyop, you don't just go to school, learn it, and then it's going to stay the same. You know, like some other jobs in the Army, you learn it. That's it. That's what you do day to day. I mean, influence, information, constantly evolving. So we need to make sure we're up on our game.
Well, the thing you also have to kind of be attuned to is the cultural nuances, the changes. So, you spoke that you're kind of focused in the CENTCOM area. That culture over time.
I was CENTCOM. I was CENTCOM with my unit with JCSE, but I also supported a contract for that largely supported the 8th, I believe, with for the JMISC out of MacDill. What happens at the JMISC? Joint Miscellaneous stays at the JMISC.
We'll probably have some kind of a change that you need to be aware of, so that way you can continue to stay abreast of how to speak to that audience.
He said abreast.
Because, the culture of today, you can look at the U.S. as a prime example. What it is today isn't what it was, 15, 20, 50 years ago. And that really is the case with any culture that you look at.
Definitely.
So we have to continue
Adapt
to
and
stay
overcome.
up to date
Shift
with
fire.
Relevant things, whether it's technology, culture, even language. So moving on to the next kind of question / topic, and we hit it a little bit, but talking about kind of today's world, modern society, is Psyop relevant? Does it matter in the world today?
Oh, absolutely. Again, I think we've hit on it quite a bit. I mean, the information environment.
Well, her job counts.
That's how everybody's getting their information these days.
Right.
That's how we're talking. That's how we're. I mean, you don't see too many people, and especially now with COVID. I mean, with all the social distancing and people not seeing each other, there's social media is blowing up. That's how everybody's communicating. So, for us to get into especially that realm,
that battle space,
and learning how to influence through those techniques, I definitely think Psyop is relevant.
So, speaking kind of like within the relevance, our regiment's small.
Very.
So, how does that then translate to the relevance of what we do across the globe?
So our regiment's small, and we do deploy with small teams, but
same as JCSE.
The effects we achieve, although sometimes not instantaneous,
there you go.
They're lasting, and they're usually pretty big. Can't think of any specific topics off the top of my head.
Right.
However, if even peacetime operations, we're conducting peacetime operations. We might send a few soldiers working out of an embassy. And what they're doing is really trying to build up stability in a country, making sure they legitimize that government, getting support for their security forces. So just a group can increase their military size by 50%. And create stability in a country. I think that's pretty cool.
So no, yeah, absolutely. So having, we talked about it, small teams, potentially individuals out working small force, are extremely relevant and present globally, and are having regular impacts even to this moment. That's pretty impressive for a small force. I think we mentioned something like 80 missions.
Yeah.
So, we're touching everything
and
everywhere.
Growing. I mean, there's just a constant demand signal for, bring me more Psyop. It's like more cowbell,
Yes.
More cowbell. But what about Laura Logan? I always get in trouble when I bring this up. But what about Laura Logan? I didn't actually add this into there. Right? Egypt, 2010. about the same time I was leaving. Afghanistan with the IOTF. I believe, now I'm not saying this because of my clearance or any personal knowledge. I believe that there was almost certainly a tactical Psyop team, military and contractor, on the ground in Egypt when that went south. We discussed that in the previous episode. And Laura Logan ended up being raped by like over 100 Islamic extremists. Would that have ever happened if we had not been involved, assuming we were? Would that not have happened had we not been involved with the overthrow of Hosni Mubarak, I believe? It's kind of out of my AO. So how does that fit in to the overall excitement that she exuded about the use of psychological warfare? If you think that it's okay, is that like well, you have to break a few eggs to make an omelet justification? And I'm saying it kind of sarcastically, but I'm also saying, is that how you're rationalizing it? Because I think we're going to end up with a lot of egg on our face if we just keep thinking like that. That was a spectacular use of analogies right there, by the way. It just came together. No, these are the things that people don't think about, right? Let's say, and by the way, I think possibly even her husband was involved with that operation. It fits his resume, his everything about that. That's just an opinion. I would like to find out more. Right? What's going on with my TV? Well, that's interesting. Warnock. Let's continue with this. She's very excited about the possibilities of running psychological warfare operations on, well, other countries. You don't think that doesn't have an impact on us just because it's in another country? Well, I kind of think it does.
You know, it's like just sprinkle some Psyop on it, which we always hear that all the time. Or there's some.
Pour some Psyop on me. Who was that? Come on.
IO free or some Psyop free chicken. Go after it. And, you know, it does sound easy that you think you could just hop on a computer or write up a message and.
Psyop free chicken. Hold on. Jesus. I didn't load it. Where is that? Shit. Psyop. Psyop free chicken. Holy Jesus. Damn it, I didn't load this. Hold on. Jesus Christ. Is that from today? Yes, it is. There it is. Okay. Psyop free chicken. Couldn't resist.
Send it out there into the Ethernet or whatever, and all of a sudden behaviors are changed. It's not that easy. There is a process, but I think it's exciting because you actually get to think outside the box and develop that process, develop how you're going to do it, and achieve it, and again, create lasting effects.
So with that process, because I've heard some critics say that one of the process is outdated, we need to modernize. Does that process still fit the bill for what we do?
So I think it does. Like it's a framework. It's a framework. It's a guide of how we develop from start to finish.
It's more of a guideline.
I mean, a lot of the missions that we go into, a lot of that process has already been completed, and we're just kind of falling in on something that's already ongoing and keeping that up. I think what you might be alluding to is maybe the timeline of how long some of that takes.
Sure. It can be
Possibly,
cumbersome.
yeah, it can be cumbersome, and we're working through a lot of that stuff right now, especially with that increasing demand of Psyop. Looking to see how we can speed up some of these processes, maybe leverage different authorities and permissions to expand our capability.
So, like, if there really is, like, a God in Jesus, right? I personally believe there is. What part of even of his most gray area advice, right? And he's had some out there type of shit, right? Like stonings and shit he's good with. At what point, where in the Bible does it say that, misinformation and disinformation is like the key to the kingdom? I just don't. I'm just thinking. Yeah, it sounds great, but should somebody throw out there WWJD?
So looking at that and seeing what comes out of that might revolutionize it.
Well, it speaks to what you mentioned earlier as far as evolving with the times, making sure that we stay relevant with the tactics, techniques that are out there, the mediums that are utilized to influence. Yes, while leaflets may be applicable in certain situations, every situation, isn't always going to need that, and we need to understand that.
Right.
And so looking at our processes over time and kind of reevaluating and resetting or modernizing, so to speak, is definitely warranted at times.
Yes.
But I definitely agree. We're definitely relevant. I didn't think when I came into this job I would be as busy as I would be. We definitely have a higher op tempo than your typical soldier. But I will say it's a rewarding experience. So even though you're busy and you're always doing something, it's a very rewarding career field to be a part of.
It is rewarding, and I think we're definitely getting on a better track too. Of we're all trained in a specific language. We get spun up on the culture, become experts, and keeping those people kind of on that path. So we like to call some of them
like
repeat offenders,
Americans.
going back to maybe the same mission. And that's good because you're building rapport with those host nation personnel. You can pick up easily where you left off and keep it going. So I think we're getting a lot better at doing that instead of, we're going to send you here one day and over here the next.
Right.
Granted, it does broaden your horizons a little bit, but at the end of the day, Psyop is Psyop. The process is still the same. The target might just be a little bit different.
Right. And then I think we give our soldiers the freedom to kind of take that process, and, again, you said framework, and that's a great term for it because they can step outside of it and still push forward and accomplish the mission. As long as they're using that framework as kind of their, starting point. So I think we're really lucky because you get to do a lot at times with very little, ambiguity is a big thing for Psyop and special operations. So it's fun to kind of be in that environment and then see
Kirsten
your
Alley
mission accomplished from what was almost nothing to now. Oh, we've got operational global impacts.
Yeah, we've got X bad guys surrendering, or
Right.
it's really neat.
So we kind of did a little bit earlier, but kind of want to do a little story time. Just kind of some of the things that of recent past, either your experiences or maybe some stories that you're familiar with.
Yay.
That Psyop has recently done to help our country, the military, foreign military, foreign country.
I know that's what Star Wars
Is there
said,
anything that you can think
Catherine.
of or aware of that would be worth kind of telling our audience about, so that people can kind of have a little bit more of a tangible idea of what Psyop does out there?
So there's so much that we do, and I think we talk a lot about what we do overseas and for other nations and countries. One of the things I'd like to talk about, which I know you have experience with, is what we do for our country as well. As SI, we are not allowed to influence our own population. That's a no-no.
Okay.
We can inform when it comes to supporting civil authority. So, for instance, hurricane support.
Yes. So, thank you. Psyoping, influencing Americans, bad, against the law, against their rules, regulations. Like you can go to jail, military jail. Oh, come on. They make you do work and shit there. That's interesting that she said that. Repeat.
We are not allowed to influence our own population. That's a no-no. But we can
guide.
Inform when it comes to.
Where's the line? What you can inform
for other nations and countries. One of the things I'd like to talk about, which I know you have experience with, is what we do for our country,
but not influence
as well. SI, we are not allowed to influence our own population. That's a no-no. But we can inform when it comes to support.
So how could you inform someone any type of information without the potential of influencing it? Let's say that we were behind the uprising, and let's say we were behind the whole spring thing, Arab Spring. It would have been an influence option on the Arabs outside of America, but are you telling me that didn't impact us? What about operations in Ukraine? I'm really curious about the Maidan incident, but what about influence operations in Ukraine? Ukraine doesn't impact us, changing their government. What about influence operations in Russia? That doesn't impact Americans? You're not allowed to influence Americans, but inherently, if you're influencing someone over there that we have a connection to, you are influencing us. What's the record on these influence operations? You generally don't know when they happen. These are all very highly classified things. What's the success rate? Well, wouldn't you want to know that? Your taxpayer dollars are funding the use of, exploiting vulnerabilities and things like, social media. I was personally involved in the room, big table, drywall building, Baghdad, Iraq, where we had the conversations where attorneys and us were trying to fully understand how, let's say, and I got to be very careful with this, but I am. You know, what happens if this target that you are trying to influence in Iraq has a website, let's say, and let's say one of her team people wants to infiltrate that website or partner with them or do a deal with them very quietly. And then what if that website is hosted on a server in America? What if, you know, there are Americans that can speak Arabic and read Arabic. What if the message that's put out is read by an American? Do you think that's not going to happen? Okay, so you either have a law in place that says you're not allowed to influence Americans, or you don't. Am I wrong? I was a freaking ISO, Information Assurance Security Officer, for a decade. You either have a rule or you don't. And what they are saying and what they are doing today, right now, in my opinion, has not been fully justified within the law. And I would argue many things that she just said there. You will never hear me say that we did or did not ever do anything on Facebook, on this or on that, on an American company. I'm going to say something like that because that would be fucking illegal. But what were the things that she was very much focused on and talking about there? Were, you know, American-owned platforms. So even just aside from what she's saying there, this argument has not been decided. They've made up their mind. They said, okay, we're going to just go with it. Even though the law says, even though the Constitution, and it's not just the law. This is the fucking Constitution, right? It goes back to, the Army not being used against Americans, right? Help me out here. I'm not a constitutional scholar, but I have recently stayed at the Magnuson Hotel. But help me out here, right? It isn't. I know the AR, Army Regulations 25-2. I know a lot of different Army regulations that it falls into very gray areas. Like, what if you put, and I'm just throwing this out as a hypothetical, what if you put the fact that this was sponsored by the U.S. Army on someone's website in a very obscure page in like a number 6 font at the very bottom, like to where you'd never really see it unless you were like looking exactly for it. Have you complied with the meaning and letter of the law there? Well, the letter of the law, you probably have applied with it because you have provided attribution in the event that an American would have seen this, and it's not a covert Psyop mission or covert message. Like she said, they can put out information, they can't Psyop. Any rate, that's significant, right? Because, like I said, I was 10 years an information assurance security officer with the Department of Defense. I was ISO for these guys right here. Right? I was an ISO for them. I'm not now, but it should matter because these guys are starting to really have an impact on us. Notice the ghost emblem in the screenshot that I have at the top. I'm going to play only a very small 15 seconds. I don't want this to be used to get me blocked. And I want you to be able to see it when it comes up. But hold on here. YouTube, this is 1,000% falling under the Fair Use Act.
Take a box, and into that box we place all the horrors of the world. And we close the box and pretend it doesn't exist. Only some of us...
Oh, shit.
We take a box. Only some of us...
There. So I just stopped it right there. So that's their little hideout, a plane in the desert that apparently used to be a fourth Pog Psyop plane that probably had loudspeakers and dropped leaflets out of it. Doubtful it supported an IIA team. But they've, in this new show called, by Netflix, called, well, Six Underground. I just put Six Underground. It's basically, okay, well, let me read this here. This truly begs the question, was fourth Pog behind? Okay, so let me read from the start. As you can see in the video and screenshot, the Netflix movie, Six Underground, the fourth Pog ghost is used in the background. The movie is about a tech billionaire with a military training that decides to put together an elite team that overthrows foreign governments using assets on the ground and Psyop. Basically, every single thing that that lady, that Command Sergeant Major was talking about, they employ in this new movie. This truly begs the question, at least to me, was the fourth Pog behind this Psywar recruitment / social justice propaganda movie starring Ryan Reynolds, very handsome young man? Were the Obamas who have contractual relationships with Netflix involved with this? Good question. We are seeing too many American taxpayer-funded assets being used to influence Americans, both through military Psyop and their MIC counterparts. Now, what was one of the charges that Tory got hit with by the North Dakota Attorney General? Well, when and why do they say it's like wrong? Well, they got her for impersonating a doctor. She can't get out of that. She says she was referring to Director of Resources or something. She's just insane, people. Separate issue, though. What's the problem with her not being a doctor but saying that she's a doctor? Well, it's providing and then using that to get money from people, right? Well, you are taking the credibility and the honor and integrity and the trust that people have in a profession like being a doctor, right? And you are stealing that, like stolen valor. She was also convicted of stolen valor, right? But when you use this, and again, like Tory, during her campaign, had a T-shirt with the fourth Pog ghost on it. I look at that as the same way that she stole valor from, a Purple Heart, or from pretending to be a doctor, right? These things, that emblem, General Flynn using it on the spine of his book. Thank you, Riley, for pointing that out to me. Right? They're using General Flynn, a 3-star retired general who basically was oversaw, in charge, in overall command of these guys here. The 8th, the 4th, Special Operations, Iraq, Afghanistan. That was General Flynn, General McChrystal. So now General Flynn running around batshit crazy. Oh, you know, the preacher man warning everybody of Jesus is on his side. Yet publishing his recent book with the Psyop ghost on it, because misinformation and disinformation is cool. As long as it's good. Well, it's good to them, right? Again, a lot of the times these things can be used for good. Yeah, milk off the shelf, blah, blah, blah. I get it. But, you know, it can also be used for bad. And people will use it for bad. And some things can be used for bad, and they have so much of an impact, right? Other things get used for bad, and, you know, entire countries get nuked. How many nuclear engineers that worked on the Manhattan Project were allowed to leave their job and go to work commercially making nuclear weapons? Well, you know, why do they allow people to leave Special Forces, Special Operations Command, where they are using taxpayer funds, military, to develop hardware techniques to be able to control people's minds, their thoughts, their everything, the narrative, right? The way they vote, the way they buy. And that's okay. Like Psywar said, there's always good reasons for it. I like some of the things that understanding your data does and brings to me. It helps my experience a lot it makes my experience better on the internet, right? They know just enough about me to be able to kind of put things into my view that that are relevant to me, that are important to me. And that's a great feature. But it's when somebody steps in, this third party, which then is allowed to, whether overtly or covertly, start pushing stuff intentionally towards me, to intentionally get me focused on something that I wouldn't otherwise be focused on, or potentially even doing it with misinformation and disinformation. So I'm even more attached to it. Well, that's where the conversation's going, my friends. And it is shit. It's 9. Man, time just flies. I got everything in, though, and I'm happy with that. I hope you enjoyed tonight's show, What is Psyop? Because this is Psyop. It touches every aspect of your life, right? In the upcoming few episodes of the series, we're going to be going into the commercial component of this, the military-industrial complex. Then we're going to go into more of the technocrat component of this, the social media companies, the tech giants. We're going to be trying to understand and put all of these things together in the remaining 6 episodes up until just before Christmas. And then we're going to then we're going to use these as kind of like a platform to launch what's going to be in a spectacular new year, right? With some really, I hope, really imaginative, creative content to be able to inform you, entertain you, and hopefully get this message out. Start this conversation. Because bottom line, my friends, I don't want to be doing this. If I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. I don't like to fail. I guess that's why I'm doing this with more effort, and there's a lot of fucking effort. Don't kid yourself. Pardon my French. I'm up wee hours doing the work, putting together. I hope you guys appreciate the extra stuff that I put together. I don't have other people that are doing this. I don't trust other people to do this. In fact, I trust people so little. Like I said, I got my co-host is a mail order co-host, much like my third wife, only I got a warranty with this one. I don't remember who I shared that with, but I came up with that one earlier. So we're gonna have some fun. Thank you very much, Missing Parts. Glad you enjoyed the show. Looking forward to what you had mentioned the other day, greatly with the holidays coming, and So on that note, guys, anything you can do to help, I could use it. Right? Scraping by here, putting in the effort, putting in the time. If you can help out, please visit freedomstream.tv/contribute or The American Awakening on Patreon. Those are the two best ways to help out. I've had like little or anything coming in other than my regular monthly sponsors, and God bless y'all for your help. But absolutely need more help. So if you can do it, if you like what we're doing, if you believe in my mission, I could really use your help. Thank you very much. Good night, everyone. And God bless. Hold on. I got to go back to this. Good night, everyone. God bless. We'll see you Wednesday, guys.